15 and 16 points, but 15 for Mike and 16 for Frederico. On there, as we look at the top part on the mulligan decision here, said looks like a slow one.
Send it back, a little too slow. Opponent also goes first. I think that's an important thing to see at the top of the screen, which means that Frederico is on the draw. That kind of hand on the draw is not going to cut it. This one is significantly better with Llanowar Elves to kick things off. A 2-drop and a 3-drop, actual multiple 3-drops here. So I'm curious to see exactly which card we're going to put back on the mulligan, because if I'm in Frederico's spot here, I am happily keeping this hand.
Yeah, you can see that Llanowar Elves to kick things off, and with all of the colors of mana needed currently, you know, we could be seeing Kazandu Mammoths and Gruul Spellbreakers hitting the battlefield.
A little bit interesting on if you put a land back here, if you put back a card like Kazandu Mammoth, because the Mammoth as a modal double-face card does enter the battlefield tapped as a land. So it looks like decided to put the forest back. Drew a copy of Collected Company. Here's a Llanowar Elves, and this could get picked off very quickly by Fatal Push. And if that's the case, it's a bit of a bummer here for Frederico, who his hand, now he needs to actually draw a land, in my estimation, because you don't want to really play the Mammoth anymore. Now, drawing a Stomping Ground is absolutely fantastic, because now land 2 and land 3 enter the battlefield untapped. So that was arguably the best draw in the deck.
There you go. Stomping Ground off the top for Frederico. That does mean he's going to get down his Zertog Goblin, and he's going to put the counter on it rather than have the haste. Here comes the first instance of Uro for the match. It certainly won't be the last, as we see the big Titan hit the battlefield temporarily here for Sigrist, though, taking out that Llanowar Elves, the Bolt the Bird of Historic there, very important.
Now, here's the thing that starts to get a little bit interesting, too, now, Marshall. Remember that forest that was put back on that mulligan decision. So Frederico now on turn 3. Do you want to play Stomping Grounds untapped and play Gruul Spellbreaker or Kazandu Mammoth? Or do you want to play Kazandu Mammoth as a land? So this question has been answered insofar as, all right, I'm going to play Kazandu Mammoth right now, hope to draw a land and turn that into a 5/5. But now you're in a situation where you need to draw land number 4 to cast Collected Company number 1. So, a little bit of a rock and a hard place here, but hoping to peel a land. And if you do, life's pretty darn good.
Yeah, that's interesting, because this is definitely the higher upside play for Bastos. But if we end up seeing those 2 copies of Collected Company stuck in hand for, say, 2 to 3 turns, it could backfire. That's not going to be the case here, though. A mountain off the top of the library for Bastos says that it is time for Collected Company. And given the prevalence of haste creatures in the deck, we're going to see it main phased. Oh, it only hit Klothys, though.
Only hitting Klothys is a bit of a bummer, no doubt about that. But Klothys is actually pretty nice in the situation, because there are cards to chew on in the graveyard. And most importantly, that Uro that we saw at the early stages of this game. So for Siggy, he's got to get that Uro back onto the battlefield right now. And I do not think he has enough cards in the graveyard to do exactly that.
Doesn't look like it. He drew Extinction Event, which he can use to 1-for-1. Yeah, he's a couple cards short with the Kazandu Mammoth, or he could play a pretty beefy Krasis, a 4/4 here.
4/4 is not bad. Obviously, if a land does show up there for the Kazandu Mammoth, 5/5 is going to trump that. So perhaps this Hydroid Krasis will be on chump blocking duty. And speaking of the land, Bastos is doing a nice job of drawing them exactly when he needs them. So kudos to him on that.
Indeed. Skill game. There's another land off the top. But here comes Collected Company. Let's see if we can get a better hit than last time. Just hitting Klothys wasn't super impressive. But this time I saw at least a Pelt Collector. And since he's thinking, it usually means that there's a couple of good options. It's going to be Pelt Collector and Burning Tree Emissary. Now, does this open the door for that Extinction Event to be amazing?
It does. Now, what's also worth noting here, too, is that this Burning Tree Emissary is going to trigger, that's going to trigger multiple things. One, it's going to help grow that Pelt Collector. 2, it's going to give you a couple of mana. So now that you can play that land, trigger the Mammoth, play the Gruul Spellbreaker, give it haste, and I presume get into the red zone here. But you mentioned, and actually a little bit of a head shake here. So maybe we wanted that to be a 4/4 Gruul Spellbreaker instead of a 3/3, because a 3/3 is no good at attacking here. But as you mentioned, Marshall, that Extinction Event, thinking about getting a little odd, perhaps?
Yeah, it's interesting because, Sigrist could have been put in a... Look at Sigrist. He's just shaking his head in awe. He cannot figure out what's going on here.
Well, I think he's a little bit surprised at the...
And look at Federico. He is cursing himself right now, Cedric. What is he so frustrated about?
I think he's upset with how he uses Gruul Spellbreaker, because either you give it haste and attack, or you make it a 4/4 because it's against a 4/4 Hydroid Krasis. So now instead he made it a 3/3, and it didn't attack at all because it can't attack into the 4/4. So I think he's just upset with how he used that Gruul Spellbreaker in this game. And now Sigrist, you see a little bit of a surprised look on his face because he's going like, oh, so 4 for 1, I guess.
He looks shocked, actually. I think that Sigrist is trying to take a look at lists and try to figure out what could have been going on here that I might be missing. And as it turns out, nothing.
No, I think the answer is nothing. This turn actually, I think, ends up being really, really good for him. Like, got to make sure you tap your mana correctly here. And what I mean by that is don't let the auto tapper get the best of you like it has with me on Arena when playing this deck a couple of times. But Siggy looks to be in the driver's seat right now. He's gonna cast an Uro, not escape it just yet. And now he can sacrifice this land, play Extinction Event on odds. That'll take care of the Mammoth, the Cloythus, the Spellbreaker, and the Pelt Collector, which means it's going to be Hydroid. It's going to be Hydroid Crisis against Burning Tree Emissary and Uro soon enough.
Wow, what a devastating turn of events here. Mike Sigrist takes out everything but a Burning Tree Emissary and is even sitting at a relatively reasonable 10 life. And look at that. Frederico says, I have had enough. I'm just going to scoop him up. He conceded. Wow, that might have been a little bit of frustration on his side with the way that sequencing went during that turn. We're going to take just a quick break. We'll be right back with more right after this. Well, right now we've got a Thoughtseize on the stack here, and it seems that we cannot be heard right now, by the way.
Oh, they're going to hear us. Oh,
all right, looks like we can be heard now.
We're going to be loud and proud.
Yes, we have been actually. But there we go. We're glad that we're back. We're glad to have you back. And as you can see, things not going super well for Sigrist here. He is already facing down 5 damage even through that Thoughtseize that he found. Also, it looks like Collected Company freshly peeled off the top of the library there from Frederico, which is really the type of card that Sigrist wants to hit with these Thoughtseizes, is they're one of Frederico's only ways to actually generate some type of card advantage. If he can simply go 1-for-1 Frederico, he may be able to just stay away, or stay ahead, I should say. And now he's going to find out the news and say, all right, well, there's one of those. There's still a Spellbreaker, though, and already 5 power, looking like 7 plus the Spellbreaker 10. Could be a heck of a lot, and Sigrist is going to leave up Aethergust.
Aethergust is certainly going to have something to say about that. Claythus, not a bad draw step here, and there is a land to play to make that Mammoth a little bit larger, so that's going to turn into a 5/5. Ramunap Room is actually an important land here in this situation as well, because it's not just a regular red source of mana, so don't forget about that with regards to Mike's life totals and make our way through the course of this game.
All right, well, he's going to let the Gruul Spellbreaker hit and then actually take out what ends up being the smallest creature on the battlefield. That's the Scavenging Ooze.
A little bit surprised by that, I guess. I mean, hitting that as opposed to Kazandu Mammoth, you're taking more damage, but maybe putting away a more problematic threat. Looks like that's going to eat a Thoughtseize. And then I'm curious to see where this ooze is going to go, because there are a lot of big draw steps here.
Interestingly, it went back on top of the library.
Okay.
Here's Extinction Event now. Leaving 2 odd creatures was the plan there for Sigrist, and it worked out nicely. He knew that he was going to be able to get rid of the other 2 anyway. There's Klothys, God of Destiny, hitting the battlefield, which will certainly be a thorn in Sigrist's side and make his life difficult. Check this out. He's like, cool, I get to play Nissa, but now he's like, Overgrown Tomb, I'm tapped. I go down 4, and then all of a sudden Klothys is very close to threatening lethal, as well as any haste creature, something like that. He could just find himself dead if he's not careful.
Yeah, so this is what makes Klothys so good in this matchup, right? Because now it's going to go from 6 to 4. I mentioned the Ramunap runes earlier. Do we have a second red source yet? No, we don't. But there are draw steps, of course. So now it could be knocking down to 2 if I draw a red source, and then Klothys is going to finish up the game. So I was a little bit surprised with the Gust, not in so far as, yeah, he's got an Extinction Event, so he's going to clean up all the odds. But is the Extinction Event cleaning up all the odds more important than taking the 5 points of damage as opposed to the 2 points of damage? That was the decision point, for me in that particular situation. Now, it's pretty straightforward of, yeah, Gust or even, clean up your odds, whatever. But, I don't think it's as straightforward as it may have appeared. And because I think 3 more life would actually be pretty nice here for Mike.
It really would. Now he's going to likely take 2 here, down to 2. There was not a red source, though, to activate the Ramunap ruins. You only get the mana from Klothys if you exile a land, so you can't have both. So it's going to be Pelt Collector into Scavenging Ooze here for Bastos, who is really threatening big time. Now, there is a Hydrate Crisis at the ready here for Sigrist, but it's going to have to be pretty miraculous. In fact, he wouldn't even mind just hitting a land here, and there's a forest that would give him another life, and there's a Fabled Passage you can use along the way as well.
That's pretty nice here for
kind of all in on Crisis, but it does seem to be the answer, at least in the immediate sense.
I mean, you're just trying to buy a little bit of time around this god that is dealing you 2 points of damage a turn, but you're also trying to walk this kind of tightrope of, okay, got this god, it's kind of checking my life total, Ramunap runes in case you draw a red source, whatever, but I want to be able to gain enough life while also attacking you for a lot of damage. That's kind of the sweet spot here. Siggy deciding how he wants to go about doing this.
Yeah, there's always a question on the blockers to be left behind, as you said. That's a key decision point. How high can I go with this Hydroid Crisis?
I wonder if he wants to attack with Zagoth's Trinome or Forest either before because the reason I say that, right, is because he floated mana and then he untapped. And so are we just going to shove all of it into the Crisis or not? Like he's kind of deciding about how much does he want to do here.
He's going for 8. That's actually going to leave him a little bit of wiggle room here as far as mana goes. And there's an Eliminate.
Yeah.
As well as a Growth Spiral.
I think Siggy is in a fantastic spot here because now he can also attack. A double block gets blown up by Eliminate. A double block might look like a little attractive in this situation, but the reality is it's actually quite bad, and I'd be shocked if a double block took place here either. So I think Siggy's clock might be quick enough to get the job done here.
It's going to be close, right? Klothys is still clock like 2, and then if there's a red source, down to 2 already, and then next turn you're dead. Right now, Mike doesn't have a way to gain any extra life. But boy, he has an 8/8 Trampler. His opponent's on 16. He really just needs that 1-turn window. Yeah, and I also forgot to add in the 2 life gain from Klothys as well, so that could change the math a little bit. But interestingly, it was a forest off the top of the library here. And Mike is going to need to, it looks like he might need to find one other thing.
Let's see. So
depending on how it goes.
Yeah, you kill something on the end step. Probably just ooze, right? 3 green mana. So presumably you kill ooze, Pelt Collector, assuming ooze is able to get up to a 3/3. Pelt Collector will turn into a 3/3 because ooze is a little bit bigger than it. And then Pelt Collector can trade with a land, whatever. Yeah, this is tough. So let's see, that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I don't think there's a way for Siggy to win on this turn. 9, 8 is 17. Yeah, I don't think there's a way for Siggy to win on this turn, regardless of draw step. Because even if it's another Nissa,
he's still one short. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
even if it's another Nissa, interesting.
even if it's another Nissa, you get 2 more 3/3s. Pell Collector gets to trade with 1, and then you take 17. You go to 1.
Well, the good news for Sigrist is that even if he can't win this turn, it still would take Frederico drawing a red mana source to kind of lock up the win.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, right now it's for Frederico. My assumptions are it's red source, it's Bone Crusher Giant if it's still in.
Mm-hmm.
This is getting close. Really about it.
Yeah, the Doom Whisperer surveil ability not going to be super relevant, but it still basically says check, right? It's like, look, I'm going to get you low on life, and I'm going to have at least 14 power of flying tramplers here. I'm going to, make your life very difficult.
All right, we're getting busy in the red zone. No surprise with the trade here. Trade with the Zagal Triumph. That's the best of the bunch.
Bastos knows what the name of the game is here, hoping to find that red source. Also needed to make sure that he stayed above 2 life in case the red source was a shock land. Mm-hmm. And it looks like it's another scavenging ooze here for Frederico, and that is likely not going to be enough.
Nope.
Wow.
I don't think that's not gonna, those flyers are just much too large, Marshall.
They're huge. 14 power of flample damage in the air there for Sigrist, and what ended up being a pretty straightforward game 1 win led to an extremely close game 2 win here for Mike